All right. Well, before we get started, I'm eating hot tamales.
Dinner.
We got extra time tonight, Chris, because there's no Bobby Bones game show.
Oh, man. Yeah.
And
How'd that go? Was it nice?
I lost to
you lost to Rascal Flatts.
No, I beat him. I lost to some random person. The question, I got through the first few rounds, and then the question, they did a head-to-head, and the question was, the answer was the equator, and the girl didn't even like that. He just said, name a line that goes around, and she just went equator, which I guess was a risky gamble, but it worked. But I was thinking it might be Tropic of Capricorn or Tropic of Cancer. But
the equator does go all the way around.
It does. But I didn't even hear, like, he didn't even finish the question.
Oh, I got it. So there could have been another part of the question.
It could have been the, whatever. But I think since the name of the game was really easy trivia, I probably should have just guessed equator too.
Yeah.
Because I don't think if on really easy trivia, I don't think they're going to have the Tropic of Capricorn.
Yeah, the writing should have been on the wall at that point. It's the Bobby Bones trivia show. Let's be honest.
If you keep disparaging Bobby Bones, you and I are going to have some problems.
I've not been invited to be on any of Bobby Bones.
And with that attitude, you will not. Well, all right. So thank you to everybody watching here. Chapter 3 of the book. If you have missed the first 2 chapters, you can go to KSR right now. At the top is streaming this, which is probably where you're watching it. And below it will be chapter 1 and 2, and you can watch them. We have a couple of updates. The book finished 11th in week 1 on the New York Times list. It finished 8th on the Wall Street Journal list, and it finished 6th on the Publishers Weekly list, which, because it finished 6th, is the one that I think is the most important one, because it was where we finished the highest.
Yeah, that's fantastic news. I mean, I wish there were more lists because we're getting better.
We need more lists. Keep going. Higher and higher.
Yeah.
And Publishers Weekly, when we beat Alicia Keys. So I just was going to call her and say, Alicia, if you need some help with some songs, being one spot higher than you.
We also beat Jessica Simpson.
We did not, however, beat the guy from The Bachelor. So
we cannot beat him. I don't know how to beat that guy.
I don't know who Colton Underwood is, but
who's buying that book? Like, I mean, we are well aware that people in Kentucky are buying this book. Who's buying the Colton book?
That's a really great question. And not just who's buying the Colton book. It's not like I would suspect the Colton Underwood book is a book that people go to the bookstore and they're like a fan of The Bachelor and like, oh, I didn't know Colton Underwood had a book. I'm going to buy his book. But now you have to be searching out Colton Underwood's. You have to be like, I am such a Colton Underwood fan. I am getting his book.
Well, here's the other thing. He can't say anything about The Bachelor, I'm sure, because I'm sure that he's so tied up legally on what he can say that book's not about The Bachelor.
No, it's about his life story, what he's been through.
What has he been through?
Well, I guess you need to get the book.
I guess. All
right, well, let's start chapter 3. Chapter 3 is Northern Kentucky, which is basically Chris Tomlin's stomping grounds. For those of you that don't know, that's why he's wearing the Cincinnati Reds jersey. He lives up there. And this chapter, basically Northern Kentucky, for the most part, for most of Kentucky's history, was the most Republican part of the state. When this state was all Democrat, which it was for really 150 years after the Civil War, 130 years, it was the one part of the state that was still Republican. And that was primarily because, I mean, I'm not a historian, but probably because it was the most connected to the North, which, of course, during the Civil War, the Republicans were the North, Democrats were the South. So that's just my guess. I mean, I don't know, but I think that's probably right. But that's slowly changing a little bit. It's becoming more and more Democrat as the suburbs kind of become suburbs of Cincinnati. So what we were going to try to do was to show a little bit about what Northern Kentucky's like now, because if you're ever going to beat Mitch McConnell, which I don't think will happen, but if you're going to, you're going to have to do it in Northern Kentucky. Andy Beshear is probably the governor because of Northern Kentucky and because of the huge vote swing that occurred there.
But yet also we were told repeatedly on this trip by many people, if you recall, that some of Mitch's secret deep pockets are up here in Northern Kentucky.
Oh, his biggest donors are there.
Yeah.
And there's also a big pocket in Northern Kentucky of like the really conservative people.
Yeah.
Like the people who sit around and like plot They're the people, like when I go on Twitter and somebody writes, "Shut up, lib," chances are they're from Northern Kentucky. Usually.
Yeah, I mean, don't forget. I mean, if you need to see how conservative Cincinnati is, just watch The People versus Larry Flint, which is a great example of.
Whose side were you on? Were you on the people's side or were you on Larry Flint's
I
side?
was on Larry Flint's side.
No, see, I'm a man of the people. You can be with Larry Flint. I choose the people over Larry Flint. All right, so Boone County is where we start, and basically we use Boone County as a chance to talk about. And I'm not going to bore everyone. I will do my economics podcast at another time where I talk about tax rates for the wealthy and progressive versus regressive taxes. I won't do that. But we talked about.
Come on. Can't I talk you into that? Please.
I know you want me.
We got more time. You already said so.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that that's the sexy part everybody turned in for, but Amazon is there. But also in Boone County, they have a dog mayor named, what is it? Brent Paltrow.
Paltrow, yes.
That's where Florence y'all is. And it was where you made the joke. You were very adamant that we put in the book that whole thing about in Northern, you don't like when people say the Cincinnati airport is in Northern Kentucky and like they laugh. Like, why does that annoy you so much?
That's a joke that people who don't live around here think is hilarious to point out. And everybody who lives here has heard it so many times that it's not funny anymore. Like it is what it is. That's what it is.
But it's not a joke. It's a fact.
It is a fact. But people
in Northern Kentucky.
But people tell this fact as if it's a joke, as if they're no one's probably told you this. Everyone's told you this.
But why do you think it bothers you so much? Because it does bother you. Like you're very angered by this joke / fact.
I think it's the smugness with which everybody delivers it, as if they were the ones who were like, "Oh, you gotta tell everybody this." No, yeah, we get it.
Makes you mad. Yeah. Well, I do think Boone County, though, for people who don't live in Northern Kentucky, is an example of the really changing part of that part of the state. I mean, like I said, there's a town in Boone County that has a dog mayor. It also, however, is home to the largest Amazon expansion in the world. Yeah. And it's at home to an airport. I mean, Boone County is the third biggest county in Kentucky. Probably in 20 years, population-wise, it'll push, if you combine it and Kenton, like it'll push Lexington. And
the best way to describe it for people who don't know Northern Kentucky but know Lexington is imagine that Boone County is the area past Man o' War at this point. You know how the area past Man o' War is starting to push outward, like Lexington's breached Man o' War, and now they're starting to flood out. That's kind of what Boone County is to Cincinnati, right?
So you're saying Boone County is Brandon Crossing in Hamburg?
Yeah, that's right. Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I'll go with that. And the reason we wrote about Boone County is I do think it is instructive without getting all economic dorkiness to talk about the fact that Jeff Bezos, the leader of Amazon, has put in this expansion, and Amazon has really taken over the world, even more so during the pandemic. And yet he is worth billions upon billions of dollars. And it's just an objective fact that the wealthiest people in America and the wealthiest people in the world are just getting wealthier.
Yeah.
And put everything else aside, whether you're conservative, liberal, whatever. If you ask economists, especially ones, whether they're conservative or liberal, what is the biggest worry you have in 20 or 30 years for the economy? It's that the disparity of wealth keeps growing. Mm-hmm. And part of what I wanted to show is that McConnell tends to be more for the Bezoses of the world than the worker people. Now, Kenton County, we talk about the bridge there. Now, I'll hand this to you because that bridge annoys you more than me since you drive it a lot.
This bridge, and those of you who've driven on it know, is terrifying. And if you're not terrified when you are driving the Brent Spence Bridge, this is the bridge. There are many,
that 10 times fast.
There are many bridges there, but the one we're talking about here is the one that goes through the cut in the hill. When you're coming straight down 75, it crosses right over there by Paul Brown Stadium. That's the Brent Spence Bridge.
It's the one that most people go on. I mean, when you go to Cincinnati, if you're coming from our end, you're going on that bridge.
Correct. And if you're going north, you are underneath.
We got that wrong, by the way.
Yeah, I know.
How did we do that? How did we get that wrong? I mean, we both know we've been on it.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's one of like 3 errors that I look and go, how do we screw that up?
That's Phil. That's a Phil question. Phil should have
Yeah.
been on that.
Wait, Phil Bash, by the way, was our editor. I'm going to bash him for a minute.
Yeah, we need to talk
Say,
about Phil.
how did we make that error? Anyway, go ahead.
So the thing about this bridge is that it is very old. It is literally falling apart, as in chunks are dropping off. We tell a story in the book about a person's car that just got smashed by a giant chunk of concrete while he was at a Bengals game. It is very, very dangerous. And every politician runs and wins on the message, I'm going to get you a new bridge. That was Trump's message.
Well, it was not only
about
years ago. Obama ran and said, I'm going to get you a bridge.
Yep.
Trump ran and said, I'm going to get you a bridge.
Yep.
And they do it for Ohio, not for Kentucky. They don't really care about us, but Ohio's not a swing state, but a semi-swing state.
Yeah, the quickest way to get elected is to say, I'm going to get you, you elect me and I'll get you a bridge.
Trump, even when he was elected, had on his emergency list of like the 10 things he was going to do immediately was get this bridge.
Yeah.
And what's interesting, even though Obama and Trump are for it, McConnell always holds it up. And when we saw that, I was like, somebody told me that, and I was like, that doesn't make any sense. But then you look at it, our guy, Matt Young, who was our research person, showed time after time it could have passed, and he holds it up, even though what's the number? We have it in the book, but some crazy amount. 3% of all of the United States gross domestic product goes across that bridge every year. And yet, it's falling apart. So, but I more importantly want you to tell the story about when you went to Subway.
Yeah. So I lived in Covington for a while, which is where people just walk around with no shirts on. I don't know if we covered that in the book.
I don't think that's just Covington. I mean,
there are bumper stickers you can buy that say Covington, put your shirt on. And
you're making the argument that more people go around with their shirt off in Covington than anywhere else.
I'm telling you that if you go to the Kroger on Madison Avenue in Covington, you will see people standing outside putting shirts on so that they can go to Kroger.
I refuse to believe that of all the places we went to in Kentucky, where you think they wear their shirts the least is Covington.
Per capita, the most shirtless people in Kentucky are in Covington, walking around.
I'm not sure if I buy that.
It's true. So I live near a Subway, and I walked over there one day.
Subway restaurant.
Yeah, Subway restaurant, yeah. Walked over there one day, walked in, ordered a sandwich. They said, we don't have any bread. And I said, well, why don't you have any bread? It's noon, and you're a Subway.
Yeah.
And they said, well, some guy came in an hour ago and offered to buy all of our bread. So we sold it to him. And that was that. And I said, that sounds like a sound business decision.
Well, I think it was. They sold all their bread. They're good. They're done for the day. Like how many Subway regular sandwich sales were going to top selling all your bread?
I only regret not asking what they got for it, because I'm sure that those employees were divvying up that money. I don't think those guys said, called headquarters and said, listen, guys, we're sending you a check for the bread that just got bought.
It reminds me of when in college, I don't know if you were with me, but we went to Taco Bell and they were out of meat.
Oh, yeah.
And I said to him, I was like, and this was back when Taco Bell like only had beef. Like it wasn't like they didn't do like, I don't know, tofu tacos or whatever they do now. I don't know if they do that now either, but I was like, so you have no meat? And they're like, no, we're out. And I'm like, then why are you even open? Like, what are you seeking to accomplish with no meat?
Yeah. It makes a very easy day for the rest of the day for them to just, hey, before you order, no bread, no meat. Move on.
You just held out your hand and they just threw a big a salami right there on your hand. By the way, if you have a question, 772-774-5254. One person writes in. So again, Bobby Bones, Chris, I say the number too fast. 772-774-5254. One person writes, are you still in contact with people you met in the book club? And how did you meet people in each place? Well, we are still in contact with some of them. I think that's fair to say. Mm-hmm. I've had a lot write me once they read their section and say, they liked it. In most of the places we went to, there were a couple different ways. There were probably half of the counties, Chris, where I knew somebody and I started with them. Then there was probably, of the other 60, maybe half of those we would just call whatever was the most prominent Democrat that someone knew, because it was just a way to get in the door. And then about half of those, probably 30, we didn't know anybody, and we just walked and saw who we could run into.
Yeah, we would go and look at their elected officials and see if we could find a Democrat. That was not, we should make this clear, that was not so we could only tell the Democratic story.
It was just because so they would talk to us.
They would talk to us. They would be the only people who talk to us. You know, you have no idea how many Republicans we walked in and they were just like, no, thanks. You know, move on. And so we would go there because at least it would be a friendly face to be boots on the ground. Some of those we didn't have any.
We did have some very prominent Republicans.
Yes.
Who helped us.
Yeah.
Just with the assertion, do not tell anyone we're helping.
Yeah. Yeah.
Including a lot of Republicans you folks know who were like, yeah, I'll help you, but do not say I helped you. I mean, the effect that Mitch McConnell has in terms of people being scared of him is really unbelievable. There's a New Yorker piece that just came out last night. I don't know if you saw it, Chris, that Jane Mayer woman that I interviewed with. She, by the way, I spent like 7 hours with her. She used 2 sentences. I was like, if I had known that, I wouldn't have talked quite as much as we did. But anyway, it was amazing how scared people are.
Yeah.
But yet, I don't know about you, I get the sense that a lot of the Republicans would kind of like to be free of him. But they just aren't ready because he's not gone yet. You know what I mean? Yeah. I think there was a lot of people who are like looking forward to the day that he is not in charge of the Kentucky Republican Party, but that day's not here yet, so they're not going to say anything.
Yeah, I get the feeling it's going to be incredibly freeing the day that like those gates open up again, probably because there's a lot more opportunity. I mean, I don't know. Is there going to be more opportunity for Republicans when that happens? Oh, yeah. You think so?
I mean, right now, every Republican that wins, for the most part, has to have his blessing. Rand Paul's the only exception. I mean, a perfect example is the AG's race when Daniel Cameron, who I've grown to like, ran against Will Schroeder. Will Schroeder's a prosecutor from Northern Kentucky, been a longtime Republican, people consider him to be a great prosecutor. And Daniel Cameron's just a kid who used to work for Mitch McConnell, and Daniel wins the primary because Mitch McConnell wins him the primary.
Yeah.
Now, I like Daniel, and I think he's going to do a good job, but he only won because of Mitch, you know, and I think people are ready for that to not be the case anymore.
Yeah, there's a good chance if you are watching this in a county, let's say in a Western Kentucky county, that one of your Republican elected officials talked to us for this book, right? Western.
I would go as far as to say with the exception of Matt Bevin, I would, and Rand Paul, who just doesn't.
Nobody mentioned Rand Paul. Like that's not a hyperbole. People never mention that dude.
But with the exception of him, of those two, everybody else was helpful to us.
Yeah.
Even if they wouldn't say it publicly, they were helpful to us privately. Mm-hmm. Campbell County. That's the one place where we talked a lot about history because I was so fascinated by the fact that Newport used to be like this gambling mecca. You know, I had heard about it, but we really researched it. And I don't think people realize that in Northern Kentucky, there was like a Las Vegas here and up until like the 60s. I mean, it wasn't even all that long ago.
Yeah. And when you say a Las Vegas here, that doesn't mean there was illicit gambling here. It was basically what Las Vegas would become. I mean, these guys went on from here and went out to Las Vegas and basically founded some people. And it was founded Las Vegas.
Worse than modern day Las Vegas. I mean, there was like prostitution everywhere, and was really like quite a scene. The mob basically ran it, and of course, you tell the story about them drugging up a guy running for sheriff, and sort of framing him for having a prostitute. What do you?
It was a very centralized location for mafia traffic. In fact, I remember, and you might remember this too, and I don't remember the name of the place. There's a place in Lexington on Alexandria Pike that is known to be a place where mobsters met at post Newport. And they would come from Gary, Indiana. And
I have no idea what you're talking about.
I want to say it was a Greek restaurant off of Alexandria, or Italian or something like that.
All right. Well, we'll figure out the Greek restaurant later. What is Newport like? Like the one thing that I found when we went to Newport is it does seem like some of the people, not all, but some of the people sort of, especially pine for the days that the town mattered like that. I mean, I don't know if they want mob rule and prostitution and all that, but they sort of, there is kind of almost like a glamorization of what it used to be like. Do you agree with that?
Yeah. I mean, most people know the levee when they think of Newport. If you go back from the levee south, you will start to see what old Newport must have been like. You'll see bars like Jerry's Jug House, Coach's Corner, those bars where you would just.
No, you say the one that you made me put in the book.
Which one? The Brass Ass?
Yes.
Yeah, the Brass Ass is very famous.
You know,
you've ever seen those bars where Michelob or Budweiser would give you a shingle if they could put their ad on it? Tons of those in Newport, like old dive bars.
It is amazing. Like, I was really only familiar with Newport from the levee.
Mm-hmm.
And when you go in there, it is a different world. Like downtown, sort of gritty Newport is very different than, whatever Dave and Buster's out on the levee is.
It's really cool. Like, I think Newport's a really unique little town. It doesn't feel like Kentucky at all.
It does not feel that. That's true. That we were talking at the one the other night about how far Western Kentucky doesn't feel like Kentucky. Newport doesn't feel like Kentucky. No. Newport feels like you're like in Chicago.
Yeah, or a Boston neighborhood.
Yeah, you really don't. It does not feel like Kentucky.
Right.
All right, Grant County. We went to the Ark. So, like, what do you think of the Ark? I mean, like, I've now been to the Ark. I've been to the Ark with you twice, and I've been there once. So I've been there 3 times. What just your first thoughts about the Ark? Because a lot of people here watching this probably had never been there.
The Ark is, I mean, let's call a spade a spade. The Ark encounter is extremely cool. It's gigantic. It's clean. It's interesting. It's, I mean, if that is your bag, that is a great experience. Like you said, Matt, we've been there twice. We toured it together. We were there for Hey Kentucky, and it's very interesting. You feel like you know the story of Noah's Ark, and then you're touring it, and you're like, okay, there's polar bears, there's elephants, there's little baby dinosaurs, and that's kind of like, I think that's where a lot of sticking point comes.
Okay, stop. You're being very kind. The reason people don't like is because they don't believe. It's not that they have ducks next to donkeys. It's the fact that they just don't believe that Noah's Ark existed. And I'm not here to tell you whether you should believe that or not. As an architectural thing, it's an amazing thing. What they do. It is. I mean, it is like you think it's big, but it's like bigger than you think.
Yeah.
And it is. What amazes me about the place is that how much people spend to go there. It is $55 a person to go. And I guess like that, somebody was saying, well, Disney World is $100 or whatever, or $150. And I guess so, but I mean, it's not like they have, they don't really have rides there. I mean, they've got like zip line and a couple things, but it's more, I don't know. It's just,
for what they have there, $55 is steep.
That's what I would agree. But our purpose in bringing it up was to say 2 things. 1, it is an impressive site. Like, it's amazing that thing exists. And 2, though, to say, whatever you think about the fact it exists and how nice it is or whatever, there's been a long history of them trying to avoid paying taxes, paying the community. Like, it has religious significance to folks, but it is a capitalistic enterprise. And it has, like any other, or like a lot of corporations, tries to avoid paying its fair share. You just don't expect that to be the case about a religious Ark.
And we met, if you remember, with a group there to talk about Grant County, and the Ark was what came up. Obviously, you can't not talk about Grant County without talking about the Ark. And almost unanimously in that room, the people we talked to felt like the Ark is not a great neighbor.
True. Even like the very religious folks.
So like they thought, well, this Ark's coming. We're going to build a bunch of hotels. We're going to build a bunch of restaurants, everything. None of that has come. Those hotels and those restaurants are off of other exits nearby. They're not off the they're not off the Dry Ridge exit or the Williams, not the, is it Williamstown, right? Is that what it is? Yeah, so whatever the Grand case, the exit.
You're
up
like
from
my
Dry Ridge.
grandparents. You get focused on these little details, like what exit
Yeah,
it is. Is it the Williamstown? Was it the Greek or the Italian?
Right.
Yeah.
But they do not see the Ark as part of their community. Like,
no, I agree.
They do not feel like, for example, when we were in, and we'll talk about it in a minute, Sparta, they feel like the Warsaw, they feel like the Raceway is really a part of their community. These guys in Grant County do not feel like the Ark experience partners with them. Unless
one person on the text machine, 772-774-5254, says, the Kentucky Republican Omerta reminds me of the Louisville media with Tom Jurich. You know, there's a little truth to that. I mean, Tom Jurich at U of L was considered to be like really good at his job, really successful, a dominating, controlling figure, but people got tired of him. And people were kind of like, I know you're great at this, but can you lay off a little? Can you be, I don't get the sense that people think Mitch is like too in the Republican Party, like he won't let anybody do anything, but everything still funnels through him, right? Like, and so if he wants someone to win, they will win. Now, sometimes he'll stay out of races, like the governor's race that gave us Bevin. He stayed out of it, I think, because he didn't want to pick between Hal Heiner and Jamie Comer. He stayed out of it, and then Matt Bevin won. And he probably was like, well, I'm done staying out of stuff now if y'all are going to pick Matt Bevin.
And it's ironic because he doesn't have a presence in these counties.
He has no presence anywhere, but
he's just got his finger on them all.
But here's the thing. I think this is a lesson about McConnell. I think he does a very, very poor job of reaching out and touching and feeling the average Kentucky citizen. I don't think the average citizen feels any connection to it. I think he does do a good job of having local leaders, like calling judge executives. Like, I'll give you an example. I won't say who it is, but I have a friend who was just like elected to the city council in a town and was a Republican elected to a city council in a town that was mostly Democrat. And out of nowhere, Mitch McConnell called and congratulated him. I mean, I think that's part of the way he keeps that loyalty, is little things like that. And you know, I understand why people would be loyal to that. Pendleton County. This is where the flood was in Falmouth. And we actually went to Pendleton County, Chris, twice.
Yeah. Because
the first time, so we went, I didn't get to stay very long. You were there longer. And so you wanted to write that basically the town had gone away, the downtown. And I said to you after you wrote the first draft, do we really want to say this? Like, is that true? And we actually sent one of our assistants to go to be like a fresh set of eyes. Do you really feel like the town has gone away? And they agreed. And we wrote it, and people in Pendleton County have not said we were wrong. Like, it is amazing that a town just went away due to a flood.
Yeah, if you go to downtown Falmouth, and we did, it was all of these dusty storefronts, like diners, stores, movie theaters. They were all empty, and if you looked in the window, it was just a bunch of old dusty stuff. Like, I remember I think it was like the Pendleton County, some sort of community revival, something like some sort of place. I don't know. Some sort of, yeah. And then you look at it, there was like an old salad bar sitting in there. Yeah. It was an empty room, you know? And so it was like, surely we're in the wrong place. We're in the wrong part of town. There's more of Falmouth that's thriving somewhere else. And we asked around, they were like, nope, this is it. The flood came through it, washed everything out. Nobody came back in. It feels like a ghost town down there.
When I have talked to people about the book, one of the things I try to say that the thing that I hope people get out of it the most is the way that small town America, especially rural, you know, Southern, Midwestern, et cetera, America, is not only forgotten, that no one cares about them. And Falmouth is a perfect example of that. I mean, they have this flood that basically ruins the town, and nothing was done really to fix it. FEMA came in and bought some of the buildings at like reduced prices and basically sold them to slumlords to then, allow housing. But the town was basically just forgotten and said like, and the businesses that exist were just moved to somewhere else. And that would not have happened in a suburb of New York or whatever. It just wouldn't have. But like, because it's this rural town, they can just say, okay, well, Falmouth's gone. Okay, that's it. And I know I didn't realize that, but you see it consistently, these major moments that happen in these places, and no one cares. And part of the reason we focus on McConnell is McConnell's the most powerful senator there is. If this happens in his state, it's happening in Tennessee, Missouri, everywhere else. Because if it doesn't happen where McConnell is, what about somewhere else that doesn't have a senator as powerful? And Falmouth was an eye-opening place for that.
Well, and to speak to that point, I mean, I'm from Maysville, which is kind of on the cusp of Northern Kentucky. Some people even consider it that. This happened in 1997. This didn't happen in like 1985. This happened in 1997. I had no idea this happened. My parents never mentioned it to me. Falmouth is not far from Maysville. I called my brother. I said, did you ever hear about this happening? He was in high school at the time. He said, I'd never heard of that. So this went on and no one even knew.
Yeah, it's just a flood, and it just basically a mud flood that went through water and mud throughout the town. 772-774-5254. One person says, I'm fascinated by this Chris Tomlin. What is his real job? Well, he used to work on the television show with me.
Yeah.
And then he spent a long time doing this book with me. But otherwise, you do like advertising stuff, right?
I do a lot of advertising, a lot of creative stuff for advertising. I do a lot of freelance writing. I write for National Geographic for kids. I've done that for a very long time. I've written with KSR forever. I curate the Funkhauser site where we have stuff about pop culture up there. I've been on the radio with you, Matt, in the early stages of the Louisville radio show.
Yes.
But yeah, no, I kind of cut my teeth in advertising and then went freelance. And once I went freelance, I kind of just started doing whatever I wanted to do. So.
One person says, I don't know who you two are now that you've both shaved. I did finally shave.
Me too.
Weeks. Let me tell you, man, you wait 4 weeks, it's hard to shave. I went through 2 razor blades to do it. That's not an easy thing.
I had a mustache and for 2 days, and then my family forced me to.
Yeah, I bet you looked hideous.
Owen
County. I will tell the story really quick. I've said it on the radio once about when I went to Owen County. This was before the book, but I put it in the book section. And I stopped in Owen County. Sometimes I like just to go. I haven't done this in a while because we did it so much with the book, but I'll just get in my car on a Saturday or Sunday where I don't have anything to do and just drive like country roads and just kind of try to get lost and see something cool. And I did that once, and I was in Owen County. And I pulled over at this gas station, and it was a gas station / barn. And I walked over to the barn, and it was attached. And I walked in, and there were like 2 pool tables and like slot machines that I don't think were legal and like different stuff like that. And there were these 2 guys playing pool, and one of them was in his shirts off and jeans. And I was like, well, that's normal. But the other one was just in his boxer shorts and like old granddaddy boxer shorts, just white, plain boxer shorts. And I was just watching them, and they're playing pool very serious. And I'm just trying to make conversation. I'm like, what are you guys doing? And they just say, like, without even a hint of like joke, playing strip pool. And then they just looked at me like, duh, it's strip pool time. And I was fascinated by it. Like, these are 2 guys. I mean, I don't know if they wanted to see each other naked. Like, the idea of playing strip anything, part of it is if you win, you get the benefit of seeing the other person without clothes.
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's the hustle of it.
Yeah, I mean, otherwise, why are you playing? I kind of felt like these 2 didn't necessarily want that. It was just they didn't know what else to do for competition.
Both throwing the game, is that what you say?
No, I think it was just like, I won, you're naked, and now we move forward to the next one. So in Owen County, the big story was we talked to this teacher, and I think the premise of this was to say how much something that we don't think about a lot, like infrastructure, matters to things that are not just infrastructure. So in chapter 2, we talk about those bridges. In this chapter, they talked about Owen County is so spread out, and it also doesn't have good roads. So the roads are windy and not direct, that they have to spend such a significant part of their revenue for the school district on transportation, on busing, that they don't have enough money for books.
Right.
And, you know, like that's not something you think about. And then they don't have a lot of business because none of the major interstates or highways go through the county. And it was like well, you hear all that and you go, well, duh, that makes sense. But I think I hadn't really put it together like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to think, well, Owen County is not that far from Cincinnati, but that's because you're going up 75 and there's an exit there that says Owenton. If you get off on that exit, you go way out in the middle of nowhere to Owenton.
It's one of those things that's a sign like, hey, there's food here, and then you get off and it's like 8 miles away. That's kind of how Owenton is.
That's not where Owenton is. It's not the exit. And so they don't have tourism. I mean, they can't get anybody to come there for any reason. They don't have any really, transportation. Trucks don't stop there that much because why would they? Why they can't get there on those little roads. So they're trying really hard to like pump up their tourism. They have a big winery there. I think Eagle Creek Winery, I believe, is there. And they're trying to get people to come there. And it's the same. It's a really common story in Kentucky. We can't offer anything because we don't have anything. So let's try to find some way to get people to come here. That's what.
But what's different about Owen County is that most of the places you think of as being rural are so far away from anything that it's just the way of life. They're close enough to almost see and touch prosperity, but they can't get it. So you have 64, 65, and 71 that form this triangle, and they're right in the center, and they don't touch any of it. So like in athletics, they play these counties that are wealthy because they're connected to these roads. And it makes you think when you go back in history. I would love to read a book done on this. Maybe this will be your next book, Chris. When they drew the interstates across America, when they just figured out where they were going, they basically created winners and losers for generations.
That's a great point.
So I'll use my part of the country. When they decided that I-75 would go through London, Corbin, Williamsburg, and Jellicoe, had they decided to go Somerset, Monticello, McCreary County, which they could have just as easily have done. Monticello, McCreary County, and all that might be these bustling places, and London and Corbin might be completely broke, and instead it's flipped.
Yeah.
And I think that's really fascinating that I don't know how they drew those maps. Obviously, they wanted to go through the big cities of Louisville, Lexington, Knoxville, et cetera. But they created winners and losers. Yeah. And Owen County, at least economically, didn't. 3 interstates went next to it, and they didn't get on any of them.
Yeah, and the problem with that is, as we talk about in the chapter, is that because their roads are so bad, they have to spend so much of their budget on school buses. So their school district spends so much money on their school transportation that they don't have money literally for textbooks. They are taping textbooks together because they don't have them.
Yeah, think about that. She said that she literally makes copies of like stuff on the French Revolution and then just uses the paper copies and recycles them year after year. I don't think people realize that in 2020 that there are still places that do that. I mean,
I agree. Yeah.
I didn't. I mean, I didn't even do that when I was in school, so I didn't realize that happened.
This was one of the most eye-opening counties for me because I don't think I expected to learn in this county what we learned in this county. Yeah. Because I think I had a handle on it. I did not.
Trimble County, we went into a restaurant where people smoke.
Yeah.
I didn't did you know that still existed? I guess I guess I knew it existed, but I kind of thought we had all sort of agreed we weren't going to do the smoking in restaurants anymore. Yeah. I knew that there were still places you could go and smoke, like pool halls, but I kind of thought we all sort of had an agreement. You know what? Restaurants, we're going to cross. That's it. We're not going to do that. But at the Little Town and Country restaurant in Bedford, they're still letting them puff pass.
Yeah, and I don't recall being in a lot of places like that on this trip. I think this is the only one that really, I know that was the reason why we remembered it, because it was so, it seemed it was out of place. You know, like 20 years ago, this would have been every place we went. But these days, it was a real eye opener to see this. And it was just this, there was this old couple sitting in front. She was smoking one of those big, long 120.
Yeah, like those.
Just glaring
like,
at you.
She looked like, she sort of looked like a villain from a movie.
Yeah.
I will note, this is the place where I use it's worth talking about the Chris Rock line. Mm-hmm. So I kind of fought a little bit with our editors about this because, you know, I was thinking about the line that Chris Rock says, and we use it on page 120, where Chris Rock is talking about O.J. Simpson, and he's like, O.J. Simpson got found not guilty. And he goes, I turned on television. And he was like, black people were celebrating, screaming, and being, we won. And he goes, what the blank did we win? Every day I go to the O.J. prize. Every day I go to the mailbox for my O.J. prize, nothing. By the way, that's not the best version. Like I'm not saying that like Chris Rock and I explained that joke in the same way. But when I was thinking about McConnell, that joke really hit me as true because, and you're going to see this. I mean, when he runs for re-election, his number one argument is, I'm Mitch McConnell. I'm the Senate Majority Leader. I am powerful. Kentucky needs me. And I kind of think people buy that. I mean, I remember a lot of people would come up to me when I was considering running and say, well, Matt, I like you, but like, you're not going to be able to get done what he does. And I go, okay, well, what does he do? Like, where is Kentucky's OJ prize? Where's their Mitch prize? And I genuinely think that's true. And I've had a lot of people say to me when they read that, they sit there and thought, well, you know what? I don't really know what he does. Mm-hmm. And that's in some ways really the point of this book, to be like, hey, you know, you think Mitch is getting us all this stuff. Where is it?
Well, I wanted to ask you, I thought about this today. I thought I'd bring this up tonight because I think it's a valid question. Is this pandemic going to shoot him in the foot? Because one thing we learned was that he doesn't care until it's an election year. And then an election year, he shows up in all these counties.
I think there's a couple things, and I don't mean to be pessimistic about it because I know there's probably a lot of people watching who want to presume he will lose. I think there are two things that have to happen for him to lose, and I don't think either one of them are going to happen. Number one, Trump has to be less popular in Kentucky. He doesn't have to be unpopular, but he can't be super popular.
He is super popular.
I don't think he's as popular as he was 2 years ago, but I think he's still very popular.
Yeah.
So like he's going to get 60% of the vote in this election in Kentucky. For Mitch to lose, that number needs to be like 57. So it's not a significant difference, but it needs to be a difference. And I don't think that's happening. And then I think the second thing is you need to have a candidate running against him who can say, I should be elected. And even if you like Mitch, or excuse me, even if you like Trump, you can like me too. And I don't think Amy McGrath is that person.
Yeah.
And so I think that's why I don't think he'll lose. Now, is he going to be unpopular? Yeah, but he's unpopular now and he still wins. So, you know, I don't think that's gonna matter. And one person says, Matt, does it make you melancholy that small town America may never return? It does me. I don't know about you. What do you think?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, we saw some towns. I mean, I hate to say this because it sounds terrible, but we saw some towns on this trip, Matt, that are on their way out.
Yeah.
Right. That maybe have another 10 years, if that, of the way of the trajectory they're going. And they're a blip on the map that nobody lives in anymore. And that's really sad because, I mean, Matt, you're from a small town. I'm from a small town. We both are very, you know, indoctrinated into that small town world. And to see those kind of going away, and they don't have to go away, is really sad.
But I think that's why people ask me, because I ended up like endorsing Andrew Yang and then he dropped out like 5 days later. But people ask me why I did that. And in part was because he was the only one talking about small towns, because small towns are really screwed. And I don't know how you get it back. And we'll talk more about sort of some of that later on about the specifics of the economic reasons I think they're screwed. But it is sad. I mean, we're both from there, and we agree on that.
Well, in Trimble County actually does tie in a little bit to this, because the Trimble County chapter is about how the big city is pulling it's like the beach pulling stuff off the shore. Like Louisville's trajectory is pulling things from Trimble County. People are going to Louisville to work, which is
especially younger people. I mean,
those small towns in Trimble County are dead as a doornail, but the ones we went to, at least, it was really kind of sad.
All right, so Gallatin County is basically, we talk about the racetrack, but we really use it to talk about the Amy McGrath story. So, Chris, probably the easiest way is for me to kind of go through it really quick, and then if you have any questions or thoughts to kind of go through there. If you listen to the show, you already knew all this, but Amy McGrath got me pulled from the Hey Kentucky television show, and her campaign can say she didn't, but that's a lie. And her campaign manager not only facilitated it, he then bragged about it, and then he got caught, and a newspaper or a website used the fact that he got pulled and did a story on it, or got me pulled. I'm a forgiving person. So like, I'm not angry about it anymore, but I won't say never, you never say never, but it is very unlikely that I will actively support her in the election because of it, because I think the campaign was duplicitous. They lied to me, and they also lied to the public and said they didn't do it when we know they did. And I know they did because my bosses told me they did. So it was very disappointing. And I would like nothing better after writing this book. I mean, to give an example. So my publisher wanted me to take this book and make it a rallying cry for everyone to vote for Amy McGrath. Yeah. They would say to me,
spoiler alert.
Yeah, they would say to me, Matt, do you really want to put this McGrath stuff in there? Like, maybe if you don't put the McGrath stuff in, the McGrath campaign will get behind it and we'll sell more copies. And I was like, look, I don't care. And it's true. We will sell fewer copies. Part of the reason the Democratic Party doesn't embrace this is because I'm like, I don't really want the other person to win either. Yeah.
And we reached out to her.
We tried. I tried many times, and I tried before this. I tried after it. And the only communication we had with her is the communication I talk about here. And you were with me, Chris. And so I get a text message. Now, this is different now. My father's okay right now. He's doing better. But this was before he was sick at all. And when I'm with you, Chris, we're driving. I get a text message, and I look, and it says, from Amy McGrath, condolences on the death of your father. And then it says like nice stuff. And it says, I also heard your mother died a few weeks before. I know that's difficult. They were nice sentiments. I mean, I don't want to be like, they were very nice, but my parents had not died. At least I didn't think so.
Well, the first half of that you got first, because if you had gotten the second half of that, you would have known this was a mistake, because you knew that your mother was fine for the last few months, right? Yes, but the first part of this was sort of alarming to you.
Well, so I called my mom quickly. I'm like, I assume this is okay, but is Larry all right? And she was like, yes. And I explained what happened. And here's the thing. Like, I'm not saying that it's not possible people make mistakes. What I think happened is David Jones is the president of Humana. He created Humana. He passed away around this time. Right? He has a son named Matthew. So my assumption is that she thought I was his son. Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
That's my assumption. So people make mistakes. Now, I don't know how you would think I'm from Louisville and a billionaire, but
we can both agree, though, that's a hell of a faux pas.
Oh, it's a big mistake.
Yeah.
What was more weird to me was like, I said, hey, I think you got a mistake. And her response was just like, sorry. That was it.
Yeah.
Like, wouldn't you call, Chris? Wouldn't you call?
We also had, and
wouldn't you call? Seriously, would you not call?
You should call. You shouldn't just be like, whoops, Well,
I would call. I would be so mortified.
especially if you knew the person you had just done that to is currently writing a book
And thinking about running against you.
probably going to mention you in it, right?
And she has still, like, to her credit, she contacted me to check on, to say something to the effect of like, I hope your dad's okay after my dad had his issue a couple weeks ago. To her credit. So I'm not saying she's a bad person. She sent me a nice text. I'm just saying it was just like, I just feel like I would have said something else. That's just what I would have done, but maybe I'm wrong.
You would have, you should have smoothed that over a little more, is what you're saying.
That's what I would have.
Yeah, no, you're right.
Let's
I
fast
wish
forward.
we had had a list. We had about 50 great responses to that text.
Oh yeah, Chris.
Yeah.
Chris wanted to be mean. I see. Here's the thing, folks. I'm actually nice. Chris is like, if you have the thing where you have an angel and a devil on your shoulder, like the angel is my mom, and like really my mom, and the devil is like Chris Tomlin, the turkey hunter, Drew are over here like, ah. And I let the angel win and kept you all from letting me do anything bad.
Yeah, there was a laundry list of good responses though. You could have come up with there.
All right, so we're gonna skip. Let's skip Henry County. The basics of Henry County. We talked a lot about Wendell Berry, who we really like a lot, but who he wouldn't meet unless we wrote him a letter and requested an interview, which we did. But then he still didn't meet with us. But nevertheless, he's a legend in Kentucky, and we admire him. Correct. Yeah. And not surprisingly, we talked about Mitch McConnell, not a friend of the environment, which I think people would have guessed. Yeah. Carroll County, we met with Shorty Tomlinson, which allowed me to say, "Go Shorty at your," or allowed you to say, "Go Shorty at your birthday." And let's go to Shelby County. That was where we talked with an undocumented worker.
Correct.
So I didn't know. Did you know before this that Shelby County was like the kind of the centerpiece of Hispanic life in Kentucky? Did you know that?
I did not. We had heard, if you recall, somebody in a store in Trimble County mentioned it, and it kind of went over our heads at the time. And then we got to Shelby County, and I think then we realized that it's a real hotbed for Latino population here in Kentucky. Like,
according to a number of sort of undocumented immigrant folks that we saw, when people come to America, again, I mean, I guess we should know this. I just didn't know it. Mm-hmm. Like throughout the country, there are places that are known as sort of safe spaces, and not like in the sanctuary city context, just in the, if you go to this town, there are established Hispanic and Mexican communities that can help you find places to work, find places to live, set up your life here. And apparently in Kentucky, Shelby County is the place. See, I would have thought Louisville or Lexington, but apparently it's Shelby County. And so all across the state, when people come to Kentucky, they will look for Shelby County. And we heard stories of like these places where somebody would come in and go, an Hispanic person would come in and go, Shelby County, and they would tell them how to go. Yeah. And then we get there and there's a vibrant, like Latino, Hispanic sort of infrastructure there that I just had no idea about.
Yeah. And from what we learned too, from the people we talked about, the non-Latino community there is very protective of the Latino community there. Like it is for all intents and purposes, a really great place for, a Latino family to come set up shop.
Did you notice that wherever we were, and we did this in Union County, in Todd County, and in Shelby County, wherever we were, when we talked to Kentuckians who work daily with Hispanic, Mexican, illegal or legal immigrants, they all praise them.
Oh man.
To the point that, like, I mean, it became almost cliche. I'm conservative. I love Trump, but, and it makes me wonder, like the whole point of this person we talked to in Shelby County, who we had to use a different name because we didn't want them obviously to know who they were, was he was like, I don't understand why everybody talks bad about me. I come here, I work hard, I'm just trying to help my family. Why does the president and people around the country say, get me out of here, build a wall? And I found it really powerful. And I have to tell you, you won't find very many people, at least we didn't, who work with Hispanic immigrants who have anything negative to say about them.
Yeah, you're right. Contractors, like people who work in industries where there are a lot of Latino laborers, just praise them to no end. I think the problem is that a lot for people who aren't in those communities, the Latinos that they see, they don't see. They're people who are in roles
exactly.
that they're not interacting with them.
You're exactly right? They're invisible.
They're in hotels, they're in restaurants, and they're not in the front of the house. So you don't have that experience.
I think that's a really great point. I mean, I think the problem is, we talk about like gay marriage. Like when you and I were in college, the idea that there would be gay marriage 20 years later and that people would kind of just be fine with it was crazy. Like that was crazy to think that would happen, but it has. Like gay marriage is legal now. And do you ever hear anyone talk about it? Like all these people that projected the end of society, has it really mattered to anyone?
Yeah. Like, do you know anybody that has a married gay couple as friends and goes, those guys just are terrible. We hate them.
But I think
they weren't married.
What ended up happening over time is that people realized that they knew gay people.
Yeah.
They didn't think they did, but they did. They just didn't tell you, like our entire fraternity, Chris. I mean, let's be real. It was a lot of them. But I think with Hispanics, I think that's a really good point. There is not a small town in the state that does not have a Mexican restaurant run by Mexicans. Right. Mm-hmm. But I just don't think people know them. And I think that makes a difference.
Yeah. Yeah. I actually talked to somebody just a few weeks ago about this exact thing, and they work with a lot of Mexican laborers, and they said that, and I'm not paraphrasing. He was like, "These guys are great. They're awesome." He's like, they work hard, they show up on time, and then you know what? They just go home to their families. I don't think they're out all over the place, so I don't think that people don't get a chance to get to know them. And
that's what makes, and I've tried to not make this too much of a political whatever, but that's what infuriates me about the Donald Trump wall stuff is he knows better. He knows how important to all of his businesses Hispanics are. He knows better, and he does it just to get people riled up, and it's not right. No, and the other thing is Mitch McConnell knows better. And the reason why there's not a wall is because Mitch McConnell knows if you built a wall and we got rid of all illegal immigrants, the price of our food would double, that like there'd be a lot of jobs nobody would do. And he knows that. And yet they still exploit what is essentially racism just for cheers. And there's nothing about Trump that infuriates me more than the wall stuff, because I'm for like ending illegal immigration, but these people are just working harder than I am for sure. And I just think it's wrong. I'll shut up now. Oldham County, explain the woman that you met there.
Oldham County, we were told we had to go meet the former mayor of Oldham County. Her name is, I want to make sure I get this correctly.
Elsie,
yes. So like, have you talked to Elsie? You got to go talk to Elsie. They told me where to go find her. I went into this shop. I walked in. I said, "I'm looking for Elsie," and she said, "No, I don't know Elsie. I don't know by the name." I was like, "Okay, well, could you tell her I stopped by?" She was like, "Oh, that's me." It's like she's a really larger than life type of person.
Now, this was a person that you met that I did not.
Yes.
I was doing other things. So like you ended up getting this interview.
Mm-hmm.
I sort of picture her as like Kathy Bates.
Yeah, that's a good call. Yeah.
In like primary colors, Kathy Bates, but Republican. Is that right?
Yeah, she's the type of person that would, if you say, okay, now you consider yourself a Republican, she cuts you off and goes, "I don't consider myself a Republican. I am a Republican." Like she is hardcore. Like she even told me that she trolls people in that store by putting up a Trump flag sometimes just to, put them on edge and things like that. She is as Republican as it gets.
But doesn't like Mitch McConnell.
But she doesn't like Mitch McConnell. She actually held an event for him one time. And then she had the gall to ask him for some sort of streetlight project money, and it went completely ignored by him. And her point was, this is just like all these stories. This is something he could have done.
And he chose not to.
Literally just checked a box and they got new streetlights, and he did not do it. And her point was, I even helped get him elected in this county, and
that wasn't that hard. It's pretty Republican.
Yeah, that's true.
County. It's the richest. I mean, it's first of all, Oldham County is the richest county in Kentucky.
Mm-hmm.
While you were doing that, I was roaming around Rich Peopleville, and like Oldham County. I joke that if I had to fight anyone, I'd fight somebody from Oldham County.
Yeah.
No, by the way, I don't want to fight anybody, period. But Oldham County's got a lot of really rich people.
I didn't know this. I did not know this.
Well, it goes back to the white flight era of Jefferson County, when the schools desegregated, and that was a big part of it. And then it's also just, nice houses breed nice houses, and like people just sort of, they like living close to a city, but far enough away that they can have a small town thing. I almost got shot in LaGrange, which goes against it's the wimpiest place, but I was filming a legal commercial there with Vanessa Cantley, and a man pulled out a shotgun, and I thought, I don't want to die right here waiting on my Papa John's.
You think it was a real shotgun? I think if somebody pulled out a shotgun on me, my first inclination would be like, that's not a real shotgun.
Well, he didn't point it at me. He pulled it out like, I have this, and if things happen. I don't even remember why he was mad. He started smart. There were two women. It was a camera guy and Vanessa Cantley, and then a woman who was like a PR media person. And I remember him saying something rude to one of them. I don't know if it was like a sexual thing or if he was just being rude. I can't remember, but I didn't like it. And I felt like I was the one man there, even though I'm not exactly the manliest. And I was like, I have to take up for these folks. And I said something like, hey, you stop that, you, with your rude words. And he was like, what are you saying to me? And I'm like, yeah, I said it. And he walked away, and he got in his truck and drove away. And I thought,
I did it.
Right.
I'm the man.
Felt that Bell County coming, I just started doing that dance right there. But then he went like 30 seconds and then he was back, and his wife was in the truck, and he came out, and as he pulled over, clearly he had driven away and gotten angrier while he drove and decided to come back. And when he got out, his wife was screaming, no, no, no. And that's what made me worried. Like she realized something.
Because clearly his words before he got in the car were, I'm going to shoot that guy.
Yeah. No, no. And then, he comes out of the truck and she's screaming, and literally a cop just happened, because we were at the courthouse, a cop happened to drive by, and he saw.
I hoped your story would be, then a train came through the town and wrecked right through his truck.
No, it didn't.
Oh.
He saw a cop, and I guess he was like, he thought better of it. And he said something like, I'll be back. And I looked at Vanessa and was like, can we finish can we shoot this somewhere else? Like because the claw commercial can be anywhere. It doesn't have to be right here. Do you like my claw commercials, by the way?
I like those commercials. They don't hold a candle to the Daryl Isaacs Super Bowl commercials.
We didn't quite have his budget.
Yeah. Now I would like.
And also, though, the claw commercials had us to where we would go like this, and then we would go.
It's like the Anchorman. It's like scene from Anchorman.
They would really tell you to do that. They would go, all right, everybody look down. Now look up.
Now look up.
And then that would make people want to hire you as their lawyer.
That means I see you. That's what that means. Well, if we're telling stories from behind the scenes, there was another great story we heard from Oldham County, if you remember, that we talked about it at one point, which was they redistricted all of the schools.
Yes.
And the rich people all went nuts because they were afraid that all of a sudden their awesome multi-million-dollar home might get redistricted in with a bunch of poor people. And apparently the city council meetings for this were a circus, like a complete circus. People screaming at each other, people in the pockets, like you had government people possibly in the pockets of contractors and neighborhood developers and things like that. And that was really interesting too, because it showed how much rich people would go to hang on to what they got.
Sometimes I look back and I say, okay, there are sometimes things that happen in United States history that if they had happened differently, things would be completely different. And one of those is there was a Supreme Court case in like 1966. I think it was Texas or San Antonio v. Rodriguez. And the basics of it was a guy sued and said, hey, I live in a poor school district. That rich school district over there spends 10 times as much per student as mine. I'm not getting an equal education, and that's unconstitutional. And the Supreme Court said 5-4 that states did not have to provide equal education, that they could do it based on local money. I've often thought, what if it had been 5-4 the other way? What if the Supreme Court had said 5-4 the other way in 1966, that every school district had to be equally funded? What would have happened? Yeah. Would the country have, what would have happened? I don't know. I mean, I think it's amazing though. That's 5-4. What if it was 5-4 the other way? And I think about that in places like Oldham County, because Oldham County is not that far from Owen County. And in Oldham County, from what I hear, they have great schools and everything they need. And then 40 miles away in Owen County, they're, doing copies to just have something to read.
Yeah.
What if it had gone the other way? Just, something for that. All right. A couple of questions we'll call tonight. One person says, I sort of think Chris reminds me of a young Ryan Lemon. Does he you? Not exactly. I wonder where they get that. You don't seem very much like Ryan. Why would they
know? I don't know. At least they're not talking about my voice sounding silly.
One person says, Matt, of the counties that you've gone over so far in chapters 1 through 3, if you had to live in one, where would you both pick? So we've done, I guess, the areas right there around Louisville, Western Kentucky here. You do live in one of these. So I guess
I already got my choice. Yeah.
Let's say you can't pick that one. Let's say you can't pick one of those Northern Kentucky suburbs. What would you pick?
I mean, we just kind of dogged on Oldham County a lot, but Oldham County is pretty quaint. I mean, that downtown area.
You'd go with all the rich people. Just be honest. You would go with all the rich white people.
The town of LaGrange is really cool, though. I mean, like the main drag.
Because they have a lot of money.
Yeah, I know, right? So yeah, I guess I don't know. Either that or one of the lake counties in Western Kentucky. Those are nice.
All right, I'm gonna be a little more of a people person than you, and not immediately pick Oldham County. I would say Callaway County, Murray. I think Murray is really nice.
Because you're hip. Because you're so hip.
Pretty much, yeah. And if not that, maybe Paducah.
Paducah's really nice. Yeah, they got a great downtown.
As long as I don't have to live next to the nuclear facility and I can get a little space.
Well, Bardstown's nice if you take all the murders away.
Oh yeah, actually, you know what? I take it back. I forgot about Bardstown.
Yeah, Bardstown's pretty good.
I'll pick Bardstown.
Yeah, I think I would too. Probably.
Let's solve the murders, and then I will pick Bardstown.
Then I'll think about some property there.
Yeah, that's a good. I completely forgot about Bardstown. Well, listen, thank you all. If you would like to watch chapter 1 and 2, it's right below us here and you can scroll on it. We'll do, what do you think? Wednesday or Thursday, Chris? When do you want to do the next?
Well, Wednesday's a Survivor live blog night on KSR.
You and Survivor.
It's on KSR. It's KSR.
I ask you hey, Chris, will you take me to the hospital? No, Survivor's on tonight. I can't. So we'll do Thursday.
Let's do Thursday.
Thursday at 7:00, we'll do chapter 4. And that's where we head to the mountains. And we go to coal country. So we've got a lot of good coal stuff. Thank you all for watching this. By the way, we've had, an average of a couple thousand people watching each one of these. So we really appreciate it. And if you, as I've asked, best thing you can do for this is if you get a friend, presumably you've read the book or are reading it, get a friend, just recommend it to somebody. If all of you do that, we'll sell 2,000 more copies and Jessica Simpson will not know what hit her. So, Chris, thanks a lot.
Thanks, buddy.
All right.